real quick story how I found out about the 2-hour house. I'm drinking a Coors Light. I'm going through motorhomes inside Texas Motor Speedway, and I saw Steve showing the video to a group of all his friends about the 2-hour house story. And I said, play that again. And they played it again, and I went, man, that could be one of the best leadership books of all time. He goes, what do you mean? I said, every business principle you learn in life is in that story. They said, what do you mean? Well, you got collaboration, you got efficiency, you got teamwork, you got time management. I mean, it's right there. And I think we're human creatures of the eye. We believe what we see. And if you tell everybody that a 2,300 square foot house that exceed code is built within 3 hours, people are going to tell you, no way, it can't be done. Matter of fact, I asked a group one time, they said, what are you thinking right now? And they said, shitty house, can't be done. So my point is, go ahead and introduce yourself. And what part did you play in the 2-hour house? If you don't mind, Brent, go ahead.
Robert Aiken. I was along with my partner, Breck Watson, who's sadly no longer with us. A lot of people remember him. But we were in charge of staging, spacing everything out in a timely manner where it had to come in the order that it had to come in. I think Brent had a lot to do with that. Breck and I kind of dropped the ball for a little while on it, and then Brent came up with a diagram of how it went, and we just went from there. But it was an experience.
But you just
I first heard about it. Actually, it was in a conversation at the International Builder Show in Las Vegas. It was Brent Conaway, my brother, and Brad Root, and I were in a bar having Coors Light. And we're talking about the 2-hour or the 3-hour house they did in San Diego in the late 70s, and we had convinced ourselves that technology has improved, and we can beat that.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
That's where the seed started, and then it started to kind of grow and grow and it evolved into it was a multi-year process.
Yeah, and setting the stage on that. I mean, you guys saw a news story in California of a house being built in 3 hours, 44 minutes, and 59 seconds. And the more you guys looked at the project, you realized that you can do it in less time.
Yeah.
In fact, you figured, and we kind of talked about it, by motivating hundreds of volunteers to be part of this near impossible project. I mean, you think about it. You want to build a 2,300 square foot house from start to finish in a time it takes to watch a Monday night football game. I think it's kind of crazy. So we got to tell this story. So if and of course, real quick, what do you do? And you, Brent Conaway.
Brent Conaway, my brother and I are partners in a home building company here in Tyler, Texas, and we worked with my dad. He's not in the company anymore, but he's still with us. He acts kind of like a consultant. But we.
I'm sorry. What did you do on the 2-hour house?
The 2-hour house project, yes. We so my role in the 2-hour house was starting with the design, running through all the details on the design, trying to make it as efficient as possible. One example would be the plumbing. So when we didn't have that much time to put the plumbing in before the slab was poured, so all of that had to be in a straight line. And so trying to get those kind of details lined out, and then the critical measurements and the way the house kind of came together was my main role in the project.
What was the normal way of doing it, and what changed?
Everything had to be kind of rethought and completely recreated from scratch because we had time constraints on everything, and we just had to think through every detail, and that's where the 2 years of planning came into play. Is like, okay, how can we frame this up in 30 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever the time was. It's been 20 years now.
Yeah.
But and so that it's like, well, we can't do that. Well, how can we do that? And so we kept approaching it and taking it in smaller pieces until we got to the point where, like, okay, we've got this amount of time for the framing, and we had to stage everything and line everything out, and that's where Robert did a lot of the staging with Breck Watson, but it was just a whole lot of details. I mean, countless
you're
hours
talking
of
about
details.
building a house like this. Here's the roof. I mean, if you really look at it, look at the inside.
The whole thing, the way that was done and lifted in place, I think that was.
Talk about, I mean, when they came, somebody told you what they wanted to do. Where was your mindset, and what did you think, and how did it all work? And
well, I'd been in the Builders Association for maybe 4 or 5 years at that point. Really didn't get involved in it, and I was kind of looking for something. And that came along. I was at a meeting, and Brian brought it up, and I just thought, well, okay, I'll go for it. It sounded pretty interesting, and it was an amazing project. Something you're never going to forget, that's for sure. I still have the T-shirts in my
when he
drawer.
presented it to you, how did he present it to you? I mean, was it really already detailed and thought out before he came to you, or what? No, I'm just
about
curious.
Something that happened 20 years ago.
I didn't know if you recall.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Well, it started basically saying that this is possible. This is a possibility. You know, what if we can do this? And we believed with the technology and the information that we had at that time that we could do it. And as the conversation grew, more and more people also believed in the process. And I guess you could say the key people were the kind of like when you put a puzzle together. It was like we were the corner pieces and the outside pieces. You start there, and then you kind of work your way in. But and it just kept growing and growing and growing, and until the point that it happened. And one of the biggest things I learned out of the whole 2-hour house experience was not all the time and everything that it took to get to that point, but it was the failure of the test houses.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at every successful person, it doesn't matter who they are, sports figure or whatever. A lot of them are talented and everything, but it's tenacity. They get knocked down, and they get back up and try it again. They get knocked down, they get back up and try it again. And there's multiple stories in this whole process with all the people involved. There's lots of failures, but it's through all those failures that knowledge was gained, and we could condense the times and streamline the details of everything.
What were the failures? Just name 2 or 3 of them that you thought was
Well, the first failure was the foundation on the practice houses. When that there was one moment where they blew the horn and say, "Okay, let's go," and they had this special concrete that was created, and they went ahead and poured the retardant into the concrete, which makes it cure faster. They weren't supposed to do that when the horn went off. They were supposed to do that a couple of minutes into it, and so the concrete solidified in the truck. One of the trucks was ruined, and the other one they were just trying to get it out.
It was a mess in there. We had the one slab. I remember it was the house that was finished. That slab was a little bit rough, but it was okay. It was usable. But the second one that totally failed, I can remember looking at guys raking the concrete, and it was like a cartoon. The rakes were just literally freezing in place. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't move. And Miles Brosang had his tractor there, and he started picking up the concrete. He had the foresight to realize we were going to have a real mess on our hands, because this stuff, normal concrete was 3,500 pounds or something like that, where it cures roughly in that, and this was in the multiple tens of thousands, I think 25,000 or 27,000,
yeah. I think.
And it was super hard, and he started picking it up with his tractor, trying to get it in a pile. And at one point, I can remember him picking the corner of the slab up, and this piece, maybe 20 feet long, just lifted up. And that wasn't 30 minutes into it, maybe. It had set up that quickly. And then getting rid of this mountain of concrete that was left was an interesting exercise a few days later for the people that had that subdivision.
You know what's weird is when I started asking questions about it, but evidently they did 13,000 PSI is what the mix that they used. And did you know I read that the Department of Education uses a cement mix to dry its roads, or something came out of that on the innovation?
People think, that it was a transit mix, wasn't it, that did it? I mean, they really stepped up, and they spent a lot of money in the R&D to develop it, but they didn't do it just for the house. I mean, they use it on highways, and there's all kinds of places you can use that now where you need something, you need to get traffic on it right away. So you pour it within 4 or 6 hours, you can drive cars on it, where normally you'd have to wait 3 or 4 days before you could put traffic on it.
Go ahead.
It all started with a challenge, though. It's like, okay, we're going to build this house, you've got like 20 minutes for this concrete to set. And they're like, well, we can't do that. That's impossible. And they're like, well, sure you can. Go figure it out. And so they had people, I believe, all around the United States that were working on this, engineers trying to figure out how to get the concrete to cure that fast. And they did a bunch of test runs and a lot of failures, obviously, and they finally figured it out. And that's what that was the concrete that was used. And it's probably one of the strongest foundations anywhere in East Texas now.
Yeah.
And then after that, you got the concrete to dry in 22 minutes. Who came up with the idea to go boom, boom, boom? Is it a model that you just followed what they did in California, or what did you guys do?
No, the group approached everything individually and broken it down. They broke it down in smaller pieces, but it was a bunch of individual groups, and they had their own challenges. I mean, you've
How fast can we get the plumbing done? So, 8 minutes, and I mean to dig the trenches and set this pipe and everything else, put it in place. You've got, I think we worked off a 2-hour schedule originally. So the biggest challenge was the concrete, I think, because that was probably 20. Well, first we had to obviously set the forms, do the plumbing, but then getting the concrete to set before the main part of the house could start was huge. So that took probably 30 minutes of the whole process. And from then on, it had to be broken down into pretty small increments, painting and carpet and everything else.
I mean, you're talking about interior doors and baseboards, heating and cooling system, the bathroom fixtures, the kitchen cabinets, the floors, the ceilings, shingle the roof.
Yep.
All in less than 3 hours.
Well, the roof was complete before it was lifted on. I believe we'd set up a form of the house basically, and then they built that roof with trusses. So they started from when the gun went off. They didn't have to wait. So it was built when it was ready to put that roof on. It was lifted up with cranes.
Now with those cranes, did they do a practice moving that much weight, or was it just all?
No, they showed up the night before, I think, and
they reverse engineered because typically the roof has down pressure. This one had to have up pressure. So while they were working on the foundation, the plumbing, the forms, all the foundation components, they were overworking on the roof component and getting that and the everything all the way to shingles. And I think the HVAC was already installed at that point in time too. So that they were working. They had 30 minutes to work on that side, and then whenever they got the walls put up, then they moved it over and dropped it on top and fastened it and moved on to the next thing.
So when you real quick back to Las Vegas, it was at Las Vegas. You said you and Root and Brian, and you saw it. Then you went to have a couple of Coors Light and you started talking about it.
No, it didn't. It didn't start out that way. So our consultant. Our father, Steve Conaway, set us up with a consultant out of Denver, Chuck Shin. And so he talked about this to our house, basically saying the impossible is possible, look at this. And we were like, we can beat that. And so really our consultant started, kind of planted the seed just indirectly. And it was over a few Coors Lights in Vegas where we were like, we can beat this. And the thought and the belief in that started to grow, and then it took on. And you'll talk to a lot of the heads. Were sort of the key components of this. Robert was a key component, and it all just kind of evolved. And my job was more on the design side. I was in multiple committees, but that was the
What
key
was your
component.
process on the design side?
Just try to design something as efficient as possible, where you don't have critical measurement spots where, like, you have cabinet. Let's say you have 10 foot of cabinet, where you have 2 walls on each end. You need 10 foot 1 inch space there. That would be a critical measurement. That there's too much room for error in that. So what you do is you remove one wall where the cabinets can kind of float in, and then you have some float room. That allows the cabinets just to go in really quickly, and there's no. We just removed a lot of the components. And it wasn't just me that was on this. I headed up that committee, but there were multiple people on that committee, and we were looking at this from all different angles.
I mean, you're talking about 579 volunteers to orchestrate something like that. It's pretty amazing.
Not everybody was convinced the first meeting. I do remember that. It took a while to get everybody, get everybody
When
on
did you
board.
feel like they were buying into it?
I mean, I was pretty excited right from the get-go. Didn't know what kind of, if any kind of part I'd play in it. But the hardest part for me was I was relatively a new builder. I'd been building for maybe, 7 or 8 years at that point. And I didn't have the subs that like Brent and Brian would have, and some of the larger builders, the larger volume builders to pull from. I used the same guys out of a group of, half a dozen AC guys, the plumbers, electricians, carpenters, that kind of thing. They were all the same people over and over again. And one thing I learned about people was who really steps up, because one of my main contractors, who was very successful and could easily have afforded to, send some guys over, he just decided, nah, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to bother. And then another guy stepped up to the plate, and I used him for probably 15 years after that. And you do find out a lot about people, who's willing to get to. There were people that were just, so excited and just gave everything to get into it. I remember that. They went at it full bore, and gave everything. And there were a lot of people they really went out of their way, and it cost them a lot of personal time and money and everything else to be involved in it.
Yeah, you're talking about 2 years of planning. Even the inspectors were involved in the process. Did they go to every meeting, or did they really get, how close were they to?
I wasn't really involved in the inspectors. I do know that there were a lot of conversations with them, because they had to coordinate with the city, because we ultimately got a CO on this house through the CO's certificate of occupancy from the city of Tyler. So they had to be very much a part of all the construction to make sure the foundation was right, make sure that the electrical, the plumbing, all the details were done correctly per the city specs. That's a pretty big accomplishment. I mean, they could have gone out in the field and built this out in the country and not had all of that. But the fact that they got a certificate of occupancy from the city of Tyler is pretty impressive. They had to be a part of the whole process to coordinate.
Just getting them engaged where they want to show up at meetings and all that stuff. Yeah. Now, that's a challenge in itself. You would think. What was your personal takeaway from that event? We're 20 years later. We're looking back over the 20 years. How did it affect you in your personal life or business life from this project?
Well, it got me involved in the Builders Association, very much so, because I ended up being president 10 years after that, I guess, whatever it was, 7, 8 years afterwards. Met a lot of people and learned a lot about business, and I don't know, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Actually, it was kind of fun.
I mean, to me, it shows that the human spirit is alive and well.
Yeah.
When you make the game big enough, what about industry competitors banding together as volunteers? I'm sure you had competitors that were just all in.
Oh,
and then
absolutely.
you had some that just didn't want to. You get any stories there?
Well, I mean, a lot of people did work together, that's for sure. Whether it was from landscapers, you forget the landscaping component of the house. I think we sodded the yard. Trees, I don't think we did an irrigation system. That would have been a little overzealous to try and do that.
That was
or like brick, it would have been impossible to do a brick veneer. But
that wasn't required for a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, because you're talking. I mean, and you had to build a house from inside out. I mean, you had to change how you did it, right?
Yes.
And one thing I learned. This is for me personally. As you're laying out all the principles, collaboration. You see teamwork. You see efficiency, organization, time management, a belief system, motivate. You can't have any of that without communication. That's what I've learned. You the ability to communicate. But I think that sometimes what we have found is through the years, people will see it and then they believe it. You know what I mean? I think that somehow bringing this to life, a project like this, they start to think about what their impossible is in their lives. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And
that was a lot of that was done through we had the same focus of what we were trying to accomplish, and that's what brought competitors together and everything. We knew, okay, here's our goal. We're going to try to do this. And it wasn't about you or a competitor of mine or I'm a competitor. None of that mattered. It was more of like, this is our target. What do we have to do to get to that point? And it took everybody to make that happen. I mean,
It did. There were a lot of compromises.
Yeah.
Sam Vercher, I think, had a standing haircut appointment every Friday or something like that. So we had to shift the day that we met so that he could fit in, because he had quite a bit to do with it, as well as I recall. But no, it was fun. Everybody did get along. And it was, you're right. I mean, people you forgot you weren't competitors anymore. You worked together for a common cause.
And then you find out, it's kind of like them talking about going to Mars now. Kind of unites the whole world to work towards Mars instead of worrying about each other.
There's really
It's
no
kinda
difference.
that-
It's
it's
just
really
this is a different focus, and they've got a focus, and every company has hopefully they have a focus. If they don't, they're not going to get to where they want to go.
So teamwork, collaboration, you had to have communication. So a form of communication is what I learned is, like the shirts, who was supposed to be in and out, the flags, that's another form of communication. And, if you didn't have that, you couldn't make that happen. So, sometimes we think communication is what you say, but it's not necessarily that.
Well, and that was the one thing of the shirts and the flags. A lot of that came up in the test houses, because during the test house, everybody was basically just in the house, and there were way too many people in there. And let's say the painters were in there trying to do something. Well, there might have been 40 other people in the house too. They were tripping over each other, and they couldn't do their work. So that's where it was from that failure that we learned it. It's like, okay, let's color coordinate these guys, and that way it's like, this is a red moment, and if you're not wearing a red shirt, then you're not supposed to be in that house, and that kept people from tripping over each other.
Yeah, that first one. Well, I mean, there were kids in there from parents were working on it, and they brought their kids along to show what was going on. They're wandering through the house and everything. Yeah, it was a bit of a mess the first time, but that's what the practice house is for.
Yeah, that's
to work out all the bugs.
One of the biggest things I learned from the whole process was, or the biggest, I guess, moments was the test houses. When those failed, I would say we probably lost about half of our people at that point. Half of them just walked off and said, "We're done with this. This is a waste of our time."
Yep, and they're done that.
I can't believe we just spent 2 years on this. Blah blah blah. And it was that next 2 weeks, because we had 2 weeks before we had the real 2-hour house, and it was in that 2 weeks that those were the most critical moments of the whole process, in my opinion. And that goes back to what I was saying initially. The tenacity. If you look at every great company or a great person, they've had multiple failures, but they always get back up and they do it one more time. And it's that one extra time they finally break through.
Do you recall any of those guys walking off, coming back, and had to watch it and see if you made it? And
I don't know if
they
they
had
came
regrets?
back, but I think Brent's right. I think we had close to 900 people or something at the practice, or maybe approaching 1,000 people.
Because you had two houses. You had to
Yeah,
practice it on, not just one.
Yeah, and one was a total failure. So that really discouraged people when their house failed completely, through no fault of their own, really.
I mean, that's a big nugget. I mean, how do you handle failure? So what happened? When did y'all meet after that event? Was it within 24 hours?
I don't remember. We probably met the next day, and we probably met every day, all day, probably every day since then, trying to go through all the failures, and each little the ones that were left that did stick around, that still believed in it. And there were a lot of people that just walked off and said, "I'm done with this." But they went through and analyzed all the failures and figured out a way to fix them. And even on the actual 2-hour house, there were a lot of failures there too. I mean, it could be streamlined again, but it's just like it's like we did it. We accomplished what we tried to do, and that was it.
Now get this, I want to bring back a memory over 20 years. This is because I've just kind of, as you get into it, but Katrina came by. You had to deal with the electric, assuming the weather has to cooperate. You got to be a certain temperature, and then that has to play, and then all the raw materials have to be right there on site. And then talk about the Katrina that was coming through New Orleans and what you had to do just to get the electrical stuff, right? What was that deal?
I vaguely remember, that's 20 years ago, I vaguely remember those details, but I do remember there was some interruptions. Maybe it was with plywood. Usually when a hurricane comes through, plywood's really difficult to get. But, that was just that was probably minor compared to everything else. I mean, these were little easy hurdles, but there were hurdles everywhere. I mean, absolutely everywhere.
I mean, we spent, like guys like me in my position, we spent a lot of time going back and forth to the association with meetings, but I mean, I tell you, Brian was so driven. I don't think I've ever seen anybody so focused on something. He was determined to get this done no matter what. It didn't matter. There wasn't going to be anything in his way. I mean, you all, the whole Conaway crew really stood up. I mean, not everybody could have done that, but I mean, I don't think he worked in building houses for that 2 years almost. I mean, he was pretty much focused on that 2-hour house. Because I mean, we'd have meetings at the association, but Brian have all this information. Well, he didn't just pull it out of a hat. That's what he was doing all week, finding this out and communicating with people, getting all these details hammered down. It was amazing. It was impressive.
He had constant headwinds of, a lot of people that just never believed in it, and a lot of people that kind of believed in it, and trying to keep that motivation, that group's motivation, focused in the right spot is very complicated.
Do you think people have a tendency to believe in it? Well, you have to kind of paint the vision for them to kind of see the gap, and then how do you cross the gap? And somebody's got to figure it out. Did you ever have like stickers all over the wall and all that stuff, and have to paint all this, all these processes in place? Or
we, yes, and especially when it came down to time, because time was the most critical component of all this. And how can we do all this in certain pieces?
We're going to plumb a whole house in 8 minutes? Are you crazy?
Yeah. A lot of those kind of, it's like,
Yeah, I remember Brian saying something about, he told the garage door team, you have 10 minutes to install the garage door, and they said there's no way we can do that, and they figured out how to do it in 3 minutes.
Absolutely.
So it's stuff like that. It's amazing how, we all have our processes, and our processes guarantees the job gets done, but can the way we do our job be done more efficient?
Yeah.
Well, digging
you never really think about it.
Digging the footings and the plumbing, I remember we cheated a little bit in that they were pre-dug, rebar laid in the bottom as a guide, and then they were filled back in again. So when they dug everything for the plumbing and so on and so forth, they just had to go down to the rebar as they were digging, and that sped things up quite a bit. But still, they had to dig all that dirt out, and it had to be right, and everything had to work.
And everybody had to be inspired and motivated, which is a tough deal to do. So everybody that walked off, does anybody, well, you probably recall a couple of guys that walked off that probably wish they hadn't have, because they didn't think it was possible.
Yeah, I really don't know what they think, but they're probably like, they pretty much at that point wrote it off, or, I don't even care what happens.
So going forward, you said you got involved with the Home Builders, and it was really a project to increase the association's membership that year, right?
It did.
And that you really united. I bet you guys doubled or.
I really don't know how much exposure we got because I didn't pay attention to it. I mean, as far as the news goes, there might have been a little thing on KLTV or KTBB or something like that. Did it go? I don't even know if it went anywhere else in the country or statewide. Which really would have been a great human interest story.
Yeah, because everybody's, looks at, I guess, they look at a house just going up, and I'm kind of going, no, there's magic behind this whole deal. I mean, you got to, like I said, every business principle you can think, if you want to show somebody what collaboration looks like, all you got to do is see the story. If you want to see teamwork, see the story.
Yeah.
If you want to see communication, see the story. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you bringing all this stuff to life, and I just think it's.
I haven't seen the video of it in years.
Have you?
I watched it after it was done, but no, I haven't seen it in 20 years, I don't think.
Yeah, it'd be nice to break out some of these principles to be able to show what it, because we're kind of human creatures of the eye. We believe what we see. So I'll share with you, I'm talking to, 300 advisors one time, and I'm talking about the 2-hour house, and I said, 2,300 square foot house, exceeding code in less than 3 hours. What are you thinking? And like I said earlier, shitty house, can't be done. And then I said, well, I wonder how many other areas of your life you set limits for yourself without realizing you're doing it.
That's right.
And then I'll show it, and it shifts the whole room. It's the damnedest thing. And I think Train did it with their upper management to because we all sometimes in a box, but sometimes we're in a bigger box and we don't realize we are, But anything else you want to add that that looking back over 20 years, how it applies even in your business. You're building houses now. You're building houses. So how did it help you from that project do things differently?
I guess I don't really know how to answer that. I guess for me, maybe it's I look at things a lot, and I'm like, what if, and ask myself, things that I approach things from looking outside of the box. If the industry says this is the way it's been done because it's always been done that way, well, maybe that's not the best way. Maybe there's another route that makes more sense. And but it's through that process, a lot of failures again, but there's been a lot of successes too that apply. I mean, I think if we learn from the failures, I mean, there's a lot of and take note of what went wrong, and we can fix that and improve on it and make it better.
Anything on your end, Robert?
Well, I'm retired now. Just probably within the last month, I finally decided. I've had kind of a semi-retirement for the last 4 years, but kind of like Brent was saying. I mean, the challenges in building. I'm not the same as Brent. They were a commercial, or not commercial, but a production builder more so than me. I was a custom builder. 2 or 3 houses a year, and. But I loved the challenge, and I think that's part of the reason I got involved with it. My dad was an engineer, civil engineer, so I kind of grew up in that business, that kind of mindset where it can be done, and so that was ingrained in me from when I was young. But it's great memories from it. That's the bottom line.
In the Home Builders Association today, do they know the story of the 2-hour house, or?
The
new builders, I don't know if they do or not. I haven't been involved very much in the last few years.
I'm sure a lot of them have heard about it, but it's not a part of like everyday conversation.
They're all the young guys now.
Yeah, they're
the old guys.
It's a whole new generation of leadership there at the.
So I mean, I'd like to have a big get together, rally up the troops. Even Robert Lloyd was part of it. If we got Jimmy Martin, which he's not here anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys that are not around. That's it's hard to believe it's 20 years ago.
I know.
It's wild. I could talk about this all day long. I mean, putting a 23, I still can't believe it. You can go play 18 holes of golf and come back to the empty lot, and there's a house standing.
Yeah.
A 3-bedroom ranch house standing when it was just an empty lot the day before.
I remember we started at 8 o'clock. The horn went off, and then we were sitting at a restaurant at I think 11:30, having lunch, and there was a completed house out there with the CO.
Isn't that wild? That's
one of the biggest challenges was finding an area to do it. I mean, I can remember multiple times going around with the city of Tyler. They'd picked areas in the town that they thought would work, and they had land where they'd cleaned out a few houses or whatever, but nothing fit. Jerry Smith was doing that with who was the other guy that was involved with that, developing that? Because Jerry was working for me, and I happened to mention to him on a job. I said, Jerry, we're looking for a lot. We can't find anything. And he said, I got something you might be interested in. And that's how I think we all got hooked up with the spot that we actually built on.
And that was one thing Robert's talking about is we needed to stage all of this. We needed not a lot. We needed acres.
Well, for 4 houses, you really need area to put about 14 houses in there with all the equipment spread out and the cranes to set up and concrete trucks and just everything all at once. Normally on a job you've got one thing that happens at a time, and then the next day something else comes in, and the next day something else. Well, this was Brent and I were just talking about this earlier. I mean, commercial businesses as opposed to residential. Residential, you build one step at a time, whereas in commercial, it's the gun goes off and everybody runs in, and they're all falling all over each other, and they figured it out. And this was more like a giant commercial project, I think, in a lot of ways, the way it was organized.
And that's right across from the airport, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
the house is still there.
How many acres? Yeah, and it's of course it's a whole neighborhood now.
Yeah, it's a fairly large development. I haven't been there.
So what about the city of Tyler? And of course you had to have the police escorting these cement trucks. I mean, they had to get there at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
Did they? Was it related to temperature too? I mean, the cement mix, or did they? How did that work? They all.
I don't think that would have had that admix. It was just regular concrete that came out. I don't remember the slump they sent it. It was probably a fairly low slump when it was sent out, and that admix typically turns it into a real watery mix temporarily. I worked with it years ago in construction up in Canada. We did with admixes and concrete to try and do that for repairing highways, and it would come out. The concrete would come out very, very dry, and then you add that mix, and it just turns to soup, and it pours out very quickly. But I don't know that the temperature. I think weather was pretty nice.
It was pretty nice that day. It probably had more to do with the timing of when they put it in the truck, and the timing of when because they knew exactly when they were going to put their mixture in there on the site, and to get everything ready, and it must have been a timing
So
issue.
Really you had the practice house. So the original house, you knew you were on target when the cement dried. How'd you know the cement was going to dry? I guess they tested it and they just knew it was going to dry in 2022.
They did probably, I'm guessing, dozens. Of
Yeah, it's
test
amazing.
pours
Dozens of test batches,
and getting the formula just exactly right. I mean, it's like making a cake or something. I mean, it's like if you got too much of this or too much of that, it's not going to be right. And they finally got the perfect formula, and so they knew exactly what it was going to take and what was in there and how long it was going to take to set up and how long they had to get it, in place, and they knew all of that. So they may not have started like at 8 o'clock whenever the first horn, the start horn went off. They may have started like 2 minutes and 39 seconds after that, because they knew what their schedule was, and I don't know exactly when they started, but they had it down to the probably the second.
Or you had to clear the streets and make sure that cement truck got there in exact time.
What Brent's talking about, I mean, it was so precise, because when Brian, that railroad horn, their train horn that he brought out to start everything, that went off to start the whole show, and they weren't supposed to start for 5 minutes dumping the admix in, and some of the guys dumped it in right away, and then everybody's screaming, no, don't. Some had the whole 5 gallons in, and some didn't do anything. So each truck was setting up at a different rate. So that was the big learning experience on that first one. That was a really, really big deal, because we couldn't do it otherwise. If the concrete didn't set right, there was no way around it. You weren't going to get a house built.
So we'll wrap up, and last question is going to be, how does it affect you personally? Business-wise, one thing, but in your personal life, what did a 2-hour house do for you personally? Just that project.
You read a lot of books like I've read a lot of books. You read the about having all your arrows pointed at the same target, and I think that's more of a business approach. But I just think it's important to have a clear vision of where you want to be, and so you can have a better understanding of how to get there, and that's family, friends, and retirement, which is you do a lot of that. If you don't plan for this and don't think about it, you're never going to get there.
It's funny, the reason why I'm so engaged in this too. People say, why is it important to you? I look at the house as, what do you want your house to look like? That's your life. What do you want your business to look like? That's your business. And what do you want your community to look like? That's your community. And you work it backwards. And when your visions are clear, your decisions are easy. So I look at the project that it's, like you said, it's a lot of things that have to happen to make that a reality. And I just think it's a simple metaphor, and it's a story we've got to tell to give future leaders to have the confidence to take steps to go forward in whatever is important to them.
Well, and it does take key people. I mean, there's no question about it. You have to have some absolutely driven, focused individuals to start that, because we could have had this conversation 25 years ago at the Builders Association, and it wouldn't have gone anywhere. We could have talked about it over and over again at different, let's just, We'll think about that. That's pretty interesting. Let's talk about it next month at the meeting. And it never would have happened. It would have gone on and on forever. And all it takes is one individual who is just driven and won't take no for an answer, and then other people get on board with it too. It takes it takes some momentum to get those things going, but once they start rolling, there was no stopping that house. Once we got going on that, I don't think anybody thought about backing out. Once we got really involved in it, I don't think there was anybody that we would have been too embarrassed.
And the cool thing is he didn't tell everybody how to do their jobs. He gave them the time they had allotted. If you don't get it done,
they didn't know how to do their job. They weren't going to be there anyway. They weren't much good to us. But,
Yeah.
And initially, we didn't even have time. It was basically like, how quick can you do this? And it was like, no, that won't work. And you add everything up and you put it on the schedule. That's like 4 hours. There's no way. That doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And then you start whittling down. Can you do it any quicker? That doesn't work. Can you do it quicker? You can do it. And there were so many meetings like that, trying to get it all condensed down to.
What can we do while we're waiting for the next guy?
Yeah, because how can we prepare? Tell me if it's accurate, but I envision a meeting with, let's say you have 15 captains. He starts at the beginning, then he goes to the next person, and this guy over here says, "Boy, if you could do this, that'll save me 4 minutes here." And I mean, did y'all have like a practice run? What everybody would know what everybody's doing? I mean,
that was the test house, but that was a part of the dozens and dozens of meetings we went to. Was trying to communicate with others. Okay, if you can do this, contractor over here, that'll save us a couple minutes. Well, I can't do that because this. Well, and then you kind of work together with that, and you get that problem solved, and then you go over to another problem, and it was just. I mean, we met for 2 years, solving problems, and getting answers and just getting it down and condensing it to the point where, we've got our goal schedule now. Now let's go out and try to make this happen. And the test house was just it was an absolute failure. And that was another hurdle. And it was like, how do we? Then you've got psychological, the people, the motivation of the crowd, and it was how to get them back on board.
About 10 years ago, Dow Chemical and Exxon wanted us to talk about the 2 Hour House. Mm-hmm. And I always like to talk about your story and talk about it impossible like that. But I couldn't figure out why they asked me. But then afterwards, I realized that those companies are so big, they have all these mid-management, and they don't want to be accused of micromanaging. So they really want to try to drive the innovation and the oil company, they find the oil, they extract the oil, they transfer the oil, they turn it into plastics, and you've got all these silos, but nobody's talking to each other. Mm-hmm. And what I think is really cool about this project, you had to have everybody talking to each other to save time and do whatever they had to do. And I think you break the barriers.
It would have been impossible to do if people hadn't totally cooperated with each other. It just would never have worked.
I don't know how this is going to manifest itself, but something's going to be good with these nuggets, and then we'll try to organize it. Of course, you guys will see it, which would be fun. But we will have a party, a 20-year annual. We got to make that happen.
Is it so October this year?
It's October this year, is the 20th. So I figured, man, I've been wanting
to.
It would be fun. I don't know why I get excited about it, and when I tell the story about it, I get excited about it. So there's a purpose in life that if I can relate it to a house analogy, it's a simple metaphor.